All right, maybe I'll start, Lehman, and just to kind of lay out where we are and why we're meeting. I mean, it's about time we meet. I think it's important that Cedac starts meeting again. But we have a kind of a specific task in front of us or in front of you guys. And I'm strictly here to provide staff support for what you're about to take on. And that is reviewing the proposals that were submitted to the town's RFP for the tannery site. And I just want everyone to know that this is being recorded. It's being live streamed on YouTube, and it will be there forever on YouTube, so people can watch it. We are not taking public comment as part of this process. The reason behind that is that Cedac was given a direct task from the select board, and that's to review the tannery proposals that were submitted. There will be plenty of time for public comment as these proposals and the future of the tannery plays out. As everyone knows, in order to dispose of the property or to do something with the property, the town does need voter approval, and there will be, again, a lengthy process to that end. And hopefully this is a productive process, and we can, the community can get behind whatever proposal the community deems fit for this site. So that's where we are. Again, I just wanted to share that before we start the meeting, and then Lehman, I can, after you open the meeting formally, I can kind of give a review process of what the select board I think had intended, and then we'll go from there. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does. Thank you. Let's call the meeting to order. And thank each of you. I think we've got a full house. Everybody's here. And I thank you for participating in this. I think it's very important to the community. And we've been asked by the select board to do some reviews on this and report back. So Jeremy, you and I've talked a little. I've watched a couple of the select board meetings where they addressed what they're looking for, but please give us a summary of that and tell us where to go.
Sure. Thank you. And Janice, just so you know, I am trying to launch in on my computer and log in again. So if that works, it does. So again, thank you. This is pretty significant task. I think you guys are tasked with. You know, the tannery is a significant property in the town. The town has a lot of invested in it. And, you know, I was frankly excited and psyched to review and receive the 4 proposals that we did receive. It's a wide, it's a diverse, you know, group of proposals. So I think it is important to, I'm going to go over to my computer. Oh. Is that better for everyone?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I think it is important to look at what, to watch the select board meetings on November 4th and 17th. They had brief discussions about the tannery and what they were desiring Cedac to do. And I think you will get a good understanding of what they're looking for, if that makes sense. And the direction, you know, normally RFPs, when a municipality puts out an RFP, they have a ranking system and they score them with points. And that works in a lot of cases. You know, this is a very different case. Oh, and there's Ellis. All right.
Ellis's hand.
You know, this is very unlike most proposals and most properties for municipalities. There's a lot of community involvement, has been over a long time. 2 working groups have looked at this, and the select as their, you know, guideline or their goals and their priorities for the last couple of years, and those still continue. And the comp plan says what it does. And there's a lot involved here. So rather than doing a scoring system, I had kind of originally looked at this and kind of trying to come up with a way for you folks or some group to score each proposal that came in based on the submittal requirements as well as the evaluation criteria. And rather than doing a scoring with points, I think the select board, rightfully so, because it is such a community involvement. I mean, there's so much community involvement on this one. No doubt there will be, and so much community interest. That they're really looking for you to review the RFPs or the proposals and the RFP, looking at the evaluation criteria and the submittal requirements, and not to rank them again, but just to review them, make comments, and maybe come up with questions of each entity that is proposing to use this site. Because what will happen is we'll have to go to the select board, and likely they'll have workshops with each of the entities, each one of the entities that's proposing something, and we'll base, I think, a lot of their questions and what they have to ask and the community has to ask based on what you folks are looking at. And again, there was the evaluation criteria in the RFP. There were some submittal requirements in the RFP. And there are some other things that other entities are asking for. There's, one entity's asking for a TIF. One entity will need a zone change, zoning amendments to make a project work. But, I think every one of these proposals has some really, really good things to it and can be beneficial for the community at large. And so I wanted to just remind you of, and I've sent them to you, the Apollo Tannery Site Redevelopment Work Group's guiding principles and their report that went to the select board. And that has been for years one of the, when it comes to the town warrant articles, that's been voted on year after year after year when the town disposes of the property. And then after that happened, we had the Tannery Work Group, and I think everyone knows that the recommendations that they put out. And so what I've included for you guys to review and have them, I'm sure you've reviewed them before, is to look at those recommendations and guiding principles in that report, look at the comp plan, and look at the select board's goals and priorities, and kind of review each proposal, and based on all of that, and come up with your thoughts and your ideas and questions and concerns, because I think some of these proposals will create some concerns for folks. And I'm not pointing out any single one. I'm just saying all of them that, one's a very large project, commercial project, one's a very large residential project. Another one is a small 3-lot subdivision. And another one is park use. So that's what we need to do. We also came up with some review criteria. Again, compliance with the RFP submittal requirements, the evaluation criteria, consistency with the guiding principles, consistency with the Tannery Work Group's recommendations, which is interesting because both those don't work together either. So, you got to kind of, you got some work to do to finesse it. And one may be more consistent with one and very much less consistent with the other, and so be it. That's how it is. And then developers' experience and the ability to complete a project, the post-redevelopment environmental responsibilities on the property, zoning amendments, are they required? Are incentives needed, such as a TIF? And I know one of the entities looking for a TIF in order to make their residential project work, they would need a TIF. That does require a fair amount of work on the town's end and votes to the public. So we would need to understand that. And then finally, the overall short and long-term costs and benefits to the town. And that may be, again, whatever it is. One of the proposals is for a park type use. Does that require X amount of dollars for ongoing maintenance, capital plans, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, those are all things that you ought to think about. So with that, I think in the end, a summary of each proposal that takes into account all of that stuff and all of that criteria, and then comments about each proposal from your perspective. No one's going to dig into this, I think, as much as you guys are. And then questions of each entity for that workshop, when the entity is in front of the select board and the town, trying to give their pitch on why they believe, why they want to do this project in town. Are there specific questions the town should be asking? And that would come from you and then directed to the select board. And I'm hoping that we can try to have something turned out. I was looking at the calendar right before the meeting started. I'm hoping you guys can try to turn something out after maybe 3 weeks of work, if you think that's what it takes. And then I looked at the calendar, and that third, it's amazing, but 3 Mondays from now will be December 28th, I think. So
23rd. I mean, 21st. 21st.
Perfect. So that's kind of your task. I'm here for staff support. I don't want to get in and weighing one way or the other. I don't think that's my job. I think that's your folks' work. I will say questions may arise about the environmental issues. And as you know, we did the targeted assessment, a year ago now. It's amazing how long this takes. And Ransom Consulting is ready to move forward on the ABCA, which is the Alternative Brownfield Analysis Plan. They're ready to move forward on that. They're ready to move forward on the Community Relations Plan. They understand. Remember, I don't know if hopefully you do. We have to have a cleanup signed off on by DEP at the end of next September. That said, we can get a 6-month extension. Ransom is able to develop their plans based on a multitude of uses. So they'll be able to try to fit whatever happens. They have all, every one of these proposals. They're doing that they need to do to try to get any of these proposals into that, little box of a cleanup. So if you have questions about that, I'll answer them. I will share them if I don't know the answer with our consultants. I didn't think it was prudent to have our consultants on board and paying for them to be here for a couple hours, every Monday. So if you do have questions, I'll specifically reach out to them and get those answered. Other than that, I think you guys can take it away. And I think the select board and the community was kind of looking at this and Audra as a process meeting. So you guys understood what the direction is, and if you have any questions, ask, and I'll let you take it from there, Lehman, I guess.
Okay, thank you. I know you said this. We want to reiterate that Jeremy is not necessarily going. He's here in a support role. So this is a conversation that we as the Cedac will be having. Jeremy, are you going to be observing or attending these meetings weekly? Or as we have them? Okay.
That's my plan.
Okay. You mentioned documents that have been submitted to us, and we had several emails from you. And so here's what I have written down, and I want to make sure each of our members have these to start with. First, and these are just no particular order. The RFP submittal request and evaluation criteria, the town's comp plan, 9 listed items in the memo that are our review criteria that we're going to be looking at. TWG recommendations to the select board, the guiding principles, the select board goals from 2018, and then, and very important, but not, as a document, is a link that you sent us to the proposals, so we can go to those and actually see what was submitted by the four groups, and that's what I have written down. Is there anything we're missing? And ask the membership, is there anything that you have not gotten, or any of our members missing any of those documents?
I think I'm missing the RFP submittal requirements and the RFP evaluation criteria. Maybe those are in an email I didn't circle back to, but I haven't picked those up.
Okay.
Those are in the RFP. I did not pull them out separately. They're just part of the RFP, and I think I sent everyone the RFP. So they are in that document. Roger, if you'd like that, I could send that RFP to you again.
I can search back in your email to see if I can find it, but yeah, if you'd send it, that'd be convenient.
Yeah, that would be, if you don't mind, Jeremy, go ahead and send that. And okay, so
I will say, Lehman, one question, and then I'll try to stop.
Yep.
If anyone would like a paper copy of the submittal, I can get that to you.
Of an RFP or
Of the submittals.
Okay.
You know, rather than having to scroll through each sheet, right? Whatever works best for you all. I can get you whatever.
Okay. If anybody wants that, please send Jeremy an email and ask for that, request it.
I do have a question, Lehman,
Okay.
and Jeremy, something that, can you get us, Jeremy, what the wording was of the vote that took place a while ago? That's not a document per se, that you would be forwarding to us, but there was a vote, and I can't remember what year it was. It was advisory only about whether or not the town chose to use that property as a park or not. And I just don't remember I'm not making a judgment, but I just would like to know what that wording was.
Sure. Yeah, I'll get that to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jeremy, that's the wording on a vote. Was that at a town meeting, Robin, or what?
I can't remember. Ellis or anybody else. I don't remember how we voted on it, but it was a paper vote, and it was about whether or not the town wanted to utilize that property as a park. It was advisory only, and it was in the negative for that, but I don't remember the details of it even.
Okay. I think what we'd like to do now is to get some sense. Let's discuss or think through the process we're going to use to review this, and I'm looking for ideas and thoughts. Obviously, you need to be familiar with these documents and read the RFPs. But once we come back together, give me some input on how you think we should go about looking this over in an orderly manner and coming to some conclusions. Any feedback or discussion on that?
Yeah, I was just saying, I think it would be good to have something, a plan, in maybe not in order, but written down that I went through some of this stuff. It would take weeks to go through everything and really totally understand it. So if there's a way to condense it somewhat, that would be really helpful.
Okay.
Lehman, I was just kind of thinking through this. I think we should maybe just kind of have like an outline of, all of the things that we're going to be looking at for each one of these proposals. So we can stay consistent with each one and, divide it up that way, to make sure that we know, what our comments, questions, concerns are, and kind of just break it out that way. So we all have some kind of just quick summary we can all bring there. So we're all talking and can walk through. It's a little bit difficult on a Zoom call, just so we can make sure that, we're all looking at this. Maybe we can hit two per week, or something like that. I don't know, it's just an idea. I just want to be consistent on how we're looking at it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Lehman, let me add that one thing I was going to do, Steve, was just kind of prepare a document so that you have each one of these criteria, and then each one of the items that you were going to review for each different project. That way it could be consistent so that you all could take notes on whether it be Mike Mullins' project or Northland's project. I'll have it. I can do that and draft that and probably get that out to you tomorrow.
And then that'd
be good.
That'd be great. Yep.
And then kind of also have just a thing on pros and cons that we feel. So when we come there, we can kind of say, this is what we like about it and don't like, just to generate a little bit of discussion, not huge, but I don't want a huge 20-page outline, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Jeremy, the other thing that I noticed was that all the proposals also had a list of requirements for the proposal, in addition to there being criteria to evaluate them on. And then there are also the guiding principles of that work group. So I sort of found that there were 3 different sets of items for us to be considering as we're evaluating each of the proposals. And I thought it would be helpful if, like people have suggested, that if we have the criteria, but it also would be helpful to have the requirements of what a proposal had to include, just so we can determine if people had all the requirements, or if they met the requirements, and then the evaluation criteria and the guiding principles from the work group that are also supposed to, be considered or whatever. So it seemed like there were a number of different things that would be helpful for us to have in one place as we look at those.
Fair. So maybe what I can do is maybe I can, I'll try to draft something tonight and tomorrow to get something to you. What I'd like, I think as far as from your perspective and your review, I would hate for you guys just to review this next Monday, the next Monday, and then the next Monday. I would love for you all to be able, because there's a lot to digest, to be able to sit, at home, whenever you have time, to be kind of formulating this stuff and reading these things and understanding what the project is, and then talk about it on the Mondays. Because I think trying to answer all these questions and go through it point by point by point on, every Monday is just, we could be here for months. And the reality is we need to try to move this along fairly quickly so that we can have a vote in June for sure, to voters to vote on.
Well, I'm thinking too of a process where if you can outline in a matrix form where we need to research and what we need to develop, and then even to break that up among, those of us on the committee, whether, it's a big task for each one of us to do all of those. But if we had a starting point, maybe of people individually or I've used a process on Google Drive where we have a master document we can all look at and put our information and edits into, and then we can all see it at the same time. And that can form the foundation of assembly of information. Otherwise it gets, are we going to feed it to each other verbally? Are we going to do it on paper? Or can we use a Google Drive to facilitate it?
How does that work, Jeremy, with being a public meeting if we're sharing on Google Drive?
Yeah, that's a good question, Robin. I'll have to, everything you do and we do, I do, is a public document anyway. So, that's a good question. I'm not sure public access laws has kept up to some of this stuff, frankly. I can chat with Bill Kelly. I know we use Google Drive in the office, or OneDrive in the office, OneDrive, for a lot of things, and we share documents easily. So we can look at doing something like that. I can clear that with Bill Kelly if you'd like, that allows you guys to do that. I don't envision that as a problem. You have a specific task ahead of you. You're just going to be discussing and making comments in public, and you're going to produce some sort of document on each one of these. So, I don't really see it as an issue, but I can certainly talk to Bill Kelly.
Anybody, any other input, comments from members, suggestions? Would it work to break this down, Jeremy, or anybody? Can we break this into smaller bites by identifying, handing out a proposal to each one or two or three members for review and input, and then discussion at the meetings? Would that work at all?
I'll say, I think we all bring something different to the table. And by splitting this up, I like the idea of that because there's 4 large proposals, but I think we might miss something too.
We missed something. Okay, good point.
Some people bring some very technical advice here as well. That doesn't help, but sorry.
No, that's a good point.
But I do think if we have a good matrix and we can share that with each other, or you can share that with each other prior to the meetings, when you meet next, well, where I believe you would discuss what everyone is, thought about and formulated in their mind. I mean, I hear you. But go ahead.
Instead of dividing it by project or by proposal, can we divide it by the tasks or by those requirements of, the outline of things that we're judging is the wrong word, but reviewing them on? If we take 3 of those each time and look across the board versus looking at project by project, look at it by groups of tasks. I don't know who divides that up or what we come up with for next Monday, but.
That sounds to me better than what I had proposed. At least you got everybody looking at the same thing. Again, give me thoughts back. Anybody react to that? Good idea, bad idea?
I think it's a good idea. My guess is, though, that we ought to take the earliest parts of what leads to our final recommendations, and so that we do maybe if we have 3 meetings, we have to do maybe a third of the tasks we need to complete by next Monday. So we ought to begin working on this in this coming week, and we have to have a framework to do so.
What Robin was just proposing is statistically a good approach to this, because then we would objectively approach each question and each proposal. If we were to evaluate one proposal at a time, our moods might affect how we evaluate it. If we evaluate one question at a time, well, it'll be a much more objective evaluation. And I think it will be a cleaner and easier way to do it.
A good point. Okay.
Also, I'm curious, we're not supposed to be coming up with any kind of recommendation to the select board on which proposal we think is the right proposal. We're just giving pros and cons of each proposal, correct?
Well,
Yes.
I think,
Go ahead,
yes, but you say pros and cons. I think what my sense is that we're looking for whether it meets all this criteria or if it's not pointed out, and then any questions we have that aren't answered in that proposal, or any questions that we think the select board should weigh in on and ask in these interviews with the four proposals. That's kind of what we're looking for. We are going to steer clear of ranking them or making any recommendations of this one's better than that one. If that answers your question.
It does, yes.
Jeremy, just a question for you. I'm on this timeline of three more meetings, and I don't have a feel for whether that's enough, too much, not enough, time-wise. I know you were just talking about it's going to go back to the select board and they're going to look at it, but timing-wise, what is the schedule? Why are we meeting that, end of year deadline? Just a little more explanation on that. I'm not critiquing it one way or the other, just trying to understand.
Sure. I mean, honestly, it's about getting this review done so that the community can really start talking about it, and the select board can then bring in the entities to do a presentation or interview, because, that may generate, say, for instance, there's a large housing project on, proposed here. Maybe that's too big. Not for me to say, but, it gives them, then the entity, another opportunity to scale their proposal back potentially, or another entity has something, another issue, or you guys find an issue and that entity may come up with a solution to that. We want to be able to have some flexibility so that the entities can then kind of reply to us when we start asking questions, if they're very, still very interested, keeping in mind that we got to have, this is going to be very public. We've got to go to voters in June. And in order to go to voters in June, we have to have warrant language. if we say we need zoning amendments, those have to be done, ready to go through planning board in March.
Okay.
Things just happen, and say someone needs a TIF, that has to go to voters too. And then that warrant language and the article all needs to be dealt with in March. And there's hearings required. And, all of a sudden, we're already going to be at January 1st.
Yep.
As soon as we're done with this, or hopefully done with it. So it's really that, Robin. And, we need to start getting this underway, and the public to start making comments and feel like their comments are being heard. Because right now I think there's a little bit of limbo on what's going on with the tannery project. It's taken a little bit of time to get to this point since we received the RFPs. And that's unfortunate. But it is what it is. But we do need the time, months just go by so fast. And, when you start to have hearings and amendments to the zoning or amendments to the town ordinances, it can, it can fly by. And
thank you.
what it is. Yeah.
Any other observations? Let's discuss this idea of dividing the task and looking. Is any other thoughts on that? Looking at certain criteria across the board for all 4 proposals. Good idea, bad idea?
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. It seems to me that maybe that's what we could try to start to accomplish today, or hopefully get, a good way along to accomplishing, is what are those criteria? What are those lenses through which we're going to look at this? And we have I think bits and pieces of that in different documents, and maybe it's bringing that together and seeing if there's anything else that we want to look at. But and then spend the next couple of weeks going through those, reviewing each of the 4 proposals with each of those criteria. So.
Okay. Jeremy, is that something we can pull together?
Yeah.
Does that sound like that works as a process?
Certainly. Yep. I don't see any issue with that.
Okay. All right. I know we weren't going to our plans were not to get too deep into the discussion today or into the review or that sort of thing. Anybody else have any other questions, any points of clarification? And Jeremy, you and I can talk about what we send out and when, but any thoughts, observations from the group as to where anything we're missing or something we need to focus in on? Okay. Yes, sir.
Just so you know, I sent you all a copy of the comp plan. And that was just done in 2017. There's some things in there need to be updated already, as you can imagine. It's quite a process to do a comp plan. Oftentimes when comp plans are done and approved by voters, it's time to start looking at them again, because sometimes it just takes so long to get that through the process. I will say, going through the comp plan, and I think it's important, we're talking about these criteria and, to review this by the comp plan and the select boards, their goals and priorities. Those are kind of these things that are up there, up in the clouds sometimes, recommendations and priorities, pie in the sky things at sometimes. But I think it is important to at least review the select board's goals and priorities, because that may, change a little of your perspective. And at the same time, look at the comp plans. If you look in there, you can find them fairly easily. Just even go to each chapter, you can look at the recommendations in those chapters, and not every chapter is relevant to the tannery. So I think it's important to look for you all, just not as part of the meeting, but just to understand that there are these recommendations, because again, the select board asks you to look at those, and you may find individually just something that strikes you as, oh, the comp plan says this, and this proposal does that. So I think it's important to read those recommendations and read those and just understand that they're out there while you're doing this other work. Okay. I can certainly give you copies of each of the chapter's recommendations, but I prefer you to look at the comp plan. It's a document. I kind of live by these kind of documents, but I think it's important to for the community to kind of understand what's in those plans and what the recommendations are, because they did go to voters and it got approved. And those things matter. Those things you can't do zoning amendments if they're not consistent with a comp plan. So, you know, for instance, residential, like one of these entities wants to do here, does not work in the way they want to do it, but our comp plan does support, you know, housing affordability. So it's important to look at these kinds of things in a package. Okay.
Okay. All right. We had talked about Jeremy's proposed 4:00 meetings for the next, you know, on Mondays, starting next week, the 7th. Does that fit in everybody's schedule? Anybody got problems with that date and time?
Are you thinking there'll be about an hour or hour and a half, or is it kind of free form, however long it takes?
Yes, that. Yeah, I mean, there's a limit to how much, you know, attention we can focus in at one time, but it may be more than an hour.
Yeah, okay.
Lehman, I have conflicts the next 2 Mondays. I have other meetings that have to attend.
Okay.
I'm happy to do work in between and watch
Okay.
afterwards, but I do have conflicts. The third one I don't.
Okay. Anybody else? So you're the 12th, 7th and 12th, 14th, 7th and 14th are the 2 year.
Yeah.
Would there
Okay.
be a time change that would make a difference?
Yes, good, good.
Both of those days I have meetings also that start at 7 p.m. So I've got a 3:30 to 5 one week and a 4:30 to 6 another week, and then 7 both weeks. So it's not, they're not great days for me. And I don't want to hold the whole group up. I could do both of those Tuesdays at that time, but not the Mondays. But that may create conflicts for others.
Just from a the town perspective, I mean, I can certainly Mondays work for our Zoom you know, work that we need to do. So Janice has, you know, we don't have many licenses. I think we have 1 license for Zoom. These are available right now. I can talk to her about what other days. I can talk to her tomorrow about what other days may work better. But I think Maria may be able to provide comment. You know, it's 2 weeks, right? 2 of the meetings, and may be able to provide adequate comment and then continue to participate throughout the process. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, I definitely want Maria to be involved, and I think
Yes.
you got, you know, a lot of value and you know, to this process. So I don't want to lose that, but I also know we got to kind of have to work within the schedules of every other committee and the select board and the planning board and the ZBA. You know, that's out there. So we're doing our best. I'll try to work with Janice to see if another time works, but this was the time that she had available on, you know, every week. So.
Okay. Sounds like we need to stick with it with this time. Well, we're getting it. I just got a message from Janice. Did you see that?
Yeah. 2nd and 4th Tuesday.
2nd and 4th Tuesdays and 1st, 2nd and 4th Mondays.
You mean that's what's available?
Yeah, I assume.
Those are the dates that won't conflict with other town committees, basically.
Okay.
Because we have planning board, charter commission, a few others that meet regularly on scheduled days. So those are pretty much the days that I don't have meetings scheduled on a monthly basis. If that makes sense.
Do we have to use the town Zoom?
Yes, because we want to
Yes.
record it on the YouTube channel. Because they have to be public.
So Janice, next Monday works. I mean, next Tuesday would work, right?
That's the first Tuesday, isn't it? Oh, I guess it's
No.
not.
No, this
No,
Tuesday.
second.
Yeah, yes, next Tuesday would be fine
Second.
because select board is 1st and 3rd for December.
What I'm just trying to do is, and maybe you guys can do it rather than me, I'm just trying to look at the calendar to try to see if we can finagle Maria in for, alter Monday to Tuesday for a couple of weeks, or those days that she can't do it. It may conflict with other people's lives though. So.
Yes. Okay. So Tuesday, the 8th at 4 o'clock. Has anybody got a problem with that?
We're all so darn busy, huh?
But then the next Tuesday would be the 3rd Tuesday, and it doesn't sound like that would work.
That would be select board meeting night.
Yeah. So that would help with one of them.
Yeah.
Any problem with next Tuesday, the 8th at 4 o'clock?
Works for me.
Jeremy, is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine by me.
Okay, let's do Tuesday, the 8th at 4.
Gives you
And it sound-
a day to work on stuff.
Say that again.
It gives you one more day to work on this.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Okay. And then, so it sounds like the next week we'd be going back to the 14th, Monday, the 14th. Again, anybody, I know about Maria, anybody else? Okay. Monday, the 14th at 4. And then I guess from that we could, I'm sorry.
I could join that meeting at 5.
Oh, you can? Okay.
Yep.
On the 14th. Okay.
Yep.
And then on the 3rd Monday, you don't have a conflict, the 21st. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So there we go. We're doing just making one change.
Janice,
Yes,
I'm sorry, but does the 21st doesn't look like that meets your first, second, or fourth Monday?
that would possibly be energy committee meeting night, but I don't know if they're meeting or not. They meet the 3rd Mondays typically.
We may have to bump them.
Yeah, we could just tell them it's unavailable.
There you go.
I mean, I think we should do that, honestly.
Okay, all right.
And if they need to bump and reschedule, they can reschedule. I mean, their work's important, but this needs to get done.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we're looking at Tuesday, the 8th at 4, Monday, the 14th at 4, Monday, the 14th the 21st at 4. Now, do we need to go beyond that just to pencil one in for the 28th?
You're on your own on the 28th. I won't be here, but how about, I mean, that's right between Christmas and New Year's.
Yes.
I was just curious. I mean, you got that's 3 meetings, and then you got the 4th. I was just wondering if maybe shooting for like having a final draft of something on the 4th of January to review. I'm just thinking, trying to put in a deadline here to keep you guys kind of moving forward. And if we've got 3 meetings to you guys have to hash out some of this, we could maybe try to have a draft of whatever document it is to review on the 4th of January.
That works for me. Anybody got a problem with the 4th, January 4th, 4 o'clock?
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got it. We'll confirm that to you in an email. But if you would go ahead and put those on your calendar. Jeremy is going to, let's see, I'm looking at my list here. There was a vote that Robin was asking to send out You owe Roger some documents.
I'm going to send everyone the RFP again because
Okay.
what Roger was looking for was within that RFP. So I'll send that out.
And
Then a
then
matrix.
Yeah, in a matrix.
And then on the matrix, are you going to assign which ones we're going to discuss next Monday so we know what we're looking at? We'll say these are the first whatever we're looking at across the board.
Maybe Lehman, maybe what I can do is I'm going to try to get this document to you tomorrow.
Okay.
All of you. It's just going to be a cutting and a pasting this stuff together. I can get it to Lehman tomorrow, and maybe Lehman can kind of decide. Maybe you all can decide. I was just thinking about that, like which items you will discuss that next week. I think that's important to get down right now, or at least nailed down by Lehman tomorrow, so that you do have a week then to kind of understand that.
And when we're dividing the tasks, I mean, when we're dividing that up, are we talking about we're going to look at, out of those 9 review criteria, we're going to look at across the board all the proposals through some of them. We're going to divide that into a couple of three meetings. Is that the way I understand that? Okay.
But
so
can I just ask though, if it's just those criteria, are we also going to have on that matrix, Jeremy, the comments, the questions, some of the incentive things? I think you said like the cost and benefits to the town.
Yes.
In addition to that. Okay.
Yes. So if I look at the agenda, there were materials to review, right? And then how we had it on the agenda says, number 1 is compliance. I'm not sure that's the right word. Compliance with RFP submittal requirements, right? That's the first one. And then review of RFP evaluation criteria. That should say probably consistency with the approval criteria. Consistency with the guiding principles is 3. Consistency with the work group recommendations is 4. Then we get into developers' experience all the way down. Zoning amendments required, incentives is part of that. And the last one is the overall short and long-term costs and benefits to the town. So, I see as this matrix, those 9 items. And I think, the evaluation criteria, I know there were like 5 or 6 evaluation criteria in the RFP, but that's going to be taken care of in number 2 of the criteria, which is review of the evaluation criteria. You're not going to do a separate one on each one of the criteria, if you understand, of the evaluation criteria. Does that make sense? So I think Robin's point being, we have, I think, 3 meetings left before January 4th. And we have 9 items here, right? We have 9 items are your review criteria. So in theory, we should get 3 of those done each meeting.
Right.
And then
across all 4 proposals.
Across all 4 proposals. Yeah.
Jeremy, one other question as we look at these, you're saying a couple of them would require zoning changes. Is that pointed out somewhere in one of these documents, which ones require what zoning changes?
1, 2, I can give you a summary document, and that's, I guess I'm here for staff support, because there are 2 projects that would require zoning changes, amendments. That would be Habitat, Midcoast Habitat for Humanity, as well as the Northland's proposal, dovetail proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, thoughts? All right, we will be back in touch, and we will see you next.
One more comment, Lehman.
Yes, okay.
So we're going to try to do we're going to try to do 3 each of these nights, right? And are we just going to go down this list? The first 3 are the first night, the second 3 are the second night, or did you want to look at all of those separately or differently? You just want to leave it like that? I mean, it makes sense looking at the first 1 and 2 are RFP related, so I mean, it makes sense to do it that way. I'm fine. I just wanted to know if that's how you want to approach it.
And
Anybody, any thoughts on that?
I have a question. I mean, I think it's fine if that makes logical sense. That sounds fine to me, but should we be doing, are you going to send that matrix out? Should we be looking ahead prior to the meeting so we have a general sense so that we're not in the meeting reading and trying to evaluate whether something meets the criteria during the meeting?
Exactly. I mean,
Yes.
we'll be here for a few months, I think, if we do it any other way.
Yeah.
I think that's what we need to have happen.
Yes, I agree. Robin?
I was just going to say, if the first two are clearly related, like RFP related, does it make sense to maybe start with 2 to begin with? Because there's a whole lot of other background stuff. I mean, if it's 3, this may be a stupid question, but if it's 3, 3, and 3, we're really heavy loading the first week because there's a whole bunch of homework to do in addition. So maybe it makes sense to do 2. And
Lehman, I'll comment on that if you don't mind. Robin, I think Robin's exactly right. Looking at those, the first 2 are really kind of the meaty ones, I think, that require you to go through the proposal and into detail. I think that makes sense. And then, you know, I think the other ones will kind of play out once you get through these first 2. I do think I think that's a good point. Maybe we ought to just do the first 2 on each proposal for next week.
Next week, items 1 and 2. Okay. That does, yes. Okay, and then from there, we will decide how many for the next 2. Okay, good point. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we have homework, folks, and I think we've got everything you need. So
Reach out to me if you don't have it, and I will get you that matrix tomorrow. It may be not what you're exactly looking for, but I'm going to do my best. But I think I understand what you need, and I think Steve's right. And I think the big part about this is that anytime you review when entities review RFPs, it's important to be consistent and trying to understand that each proposal is, proposing a certain thing, and you've got to review it with a consistent frame of mind. And I think this does that. And I think it's a good point that Steve made right off the bat.
Okay. Thank you again, each of you, for the time today and the time you're going to spend on this. I know it's a lot, but I think we'll come away with a good report back, and we'll provide some value to the select board. And thank you. Meeting adjourned. Have a safe night.
you too.
Thank you all.